Hello, welcome to Walking with Anna. So I've been trying to do this walk for the last week and there's been glorious sunshine. I've been like, yes, and then I keep getting the cold and I've tried to film a few times and can't stop sneezing, so that's not been great, but I think I'll be okay just now. But my eyes might be a bit watery and apologise. I don't have coronavirus, but I have been pretty sneezy and snotty in my household. So anyway, we're here, we're outside, nice walk. I've actually just climbed the wall at the back of my house, so this is a very accessible walk for me, although it's a little bit uneven, so I apologise now for my falling over. So today I wanted to talk about expectations. So the reason I picked this topic is because I think recently when I've spoke to a lot of parents and carers of young people with additional support needs, there's been a lot of struggles with personal mental health, and a lot of that sometimes stems down to our own personal expectations and an acceptance of our own situation. So I'm going to talk about expectations as what your expectations kind of may well be as a parent or a carer of a young person. And then I want to talk a little bit about maybe expectations in relation to professionals. And then I thought it would be a good idea to talk about kind of expectations from a young person's perspective. So I'm going to go down those three categories. If I can manage not to break my ankle and walking on this uneven grass, that will be even better. So expectations as a parent or a carer of a young person with additional support needs. Now, I think this kind of all goes back to kind of that perception of what parenting is. Now, when I'm talking about parenting, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the parent in the situation. You may be part of a young person's caring circle, and therefore this kind of is very applicable. So I apologise now if I'm going on too much about parenting and you don't feel like that's a phrase that you really associate with. So my perspective, I suppose, is more based around my personal experience. So, I'm already falling, sorry guys. So, you have this image, I think, in your head as a younger person of having a family and what parenting will be like. And, I grew up watching the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie. And yeah, there are things that you watch in society that reflect lots of realistic things about families, but there's also a lot that isn't realistic about families. And I always say, I think a lot of people, once they've had their own children, feel sorry for their own parents and think about what they were like as a child and a young person, and the impact that would have had on their parents. So, parenting is not always what we expect. And I think if you have a child with additional support needs, that has an even bigger kind of consequence on how your life and how your perspective is. There's the reality of, do we think that you're going to raise your children and then get your life back? And then maybe if you have a young person with additional support needs who you recognise that actually you're going to be their carer for their whole lives, that has a drastic impact on how you see yourself, your perceptions of yourself, of your future planning. So it changes the whole dynamic of your life. And I think when you look after, when you parent and care for a child with additional support needs, it influences every aspect of your life. And sometimes I think it's difficult because if you don't have anything to compare it to. So, I remember speaking to somebody once who talked about, looking after their child at bedtime and how difficult sleep was, and recognizing that their child would only really sleep for an hour at the most at the time. And they just thought that was perfectly, that's okay. That's just what everybody does, isn't it? That's what life's like. And then it was only maybe through having conversations that they recognized that, oh, okay. No, some kids just go to bed and then they wake up the next morning. Okay, that blows my mind. Now, so I suppose this is where we start to kind of think about what is the difference between somebody who is a parent and someone who is a parent carer, because we're all always caring for our children. But what is that line that makes things definitely realizing that you are a carer, because you're doing things that other people wouldn't be doing. You know, if you're caring for your child's personal needs when they're older, that's because they need you to do that, and that is a caring responsibility. And if you weren't doing that, nobody else would if your child can't do that for themselves. So, you know, that is a whole different perspective from just the average stereotypical parenting and raising your child. You know, if you think about a family, you know, get up in the morning if they're going off to school, or at the weekends if you're getting ready to go out and play with your friends, you know, get up, get dressed, have your breakfast, and brush your teeth, do XYZ, and off they go to do whatever you need to do together. And actually, many of our households, it doesn't happen like that. You know, brushing your teeth can be a huge trigger for a lot of children. There's sensory issues, kids with trauma who don't like cleanliness. There's so many different perspectives that can influence small activities that many people may take for granted. Sleeping again is another one. Food, or all these issues that we have to spend so much time working on, and you think, how is this my life? You know, I do think that sometimes. You know, I do make that phrase, and I wouldn't change my kids. I absolutely adore them exactly as they are and love them and accept them. But sometimes I do giggle and think, oh, did I really think I'd be doing this? Did I really think I'd be juggling 3 different jobs in order to try and ensure that I can take my kids to school every day and pick them up every day? Because I know that helps them feel calmer, and I know that helps them feel safer, and so that's a real priority for my children. So, but no, I didn't expect to do that, but I've had to adapt my whole life to be able to give them the care that they need. And that's the difference between maybe parent and being a parent carer, is when you have to make these drastic changes into your own life in order to adapt them. You know, some things are very obvious, so physical adaptations that you maybe have to do to your home, you know, but not everything is seen by everybody. And I think a lot of the time, you know, invisible disabilities really cover stuff for parents, can really make it more difficult for people to be able to gain a level of understanding about what it's really like for you as a family and as a cohort. And I can't really even comprehend if I was doing this without my husband. So I'm very, very lucky in that my, I suppose, expectations of parenting have drastically changed, because it's hard, because my expectations of parenting were maybe about this family fun days and all of this, and actually we do that because we make it happen, but the exhaustion isn't something I expected. The tiredness, the frustrations that you can get with yourself for feeling like maybe you're not always being good enough, or you're not doing everything you want to do, all of that isn't what I expected. But I have a partner who I can talk to about that, who shares similarities and understanding, and we can talk about it together. If I didn't have him, I think I would struggle, genuinely really struggle. And so I think we need to recognise that as communities we need to support people, and recognise that, you know, in every situation people need support. So whether they're single parent families, families with multiple children with additional support needs, these are massive priorities of areas where as a community I think we really need to support and help people. I'm just stopping because there's quite a dip and it's quite muddy, so I'm just going to get over there and then I'm going to come back and talk to you. So I'm over the hill and a little bit wet feet, but not too bad. So expectations as a parent then. So the other thing that I would maybe touch on from a parent's perspective is your expectations of the whole vision of family and the whole vision of everything you're doing and coping, and not really realizing how much of a fight things might be and how much of a struggle things might be. And that is something that becomes, you know, you just think that things will be in place for your children, especially if they have needs. You think, oh, that'll be, you know, we'll need some support here and there, and you just kind of expect it to be there. And it's a big kind of shock, I suppose, when things are very hard to get support for, or are very hard because of the area where we live. Obviously that makes things more difficult because things are more spread out, and yeah, those things, the reality is harsher than the expectations. So you do, when you live in the Highlands, really do have to kind of support yourself a little bit more and look to more alternative support that you can get in the community, and just see what is actually accessible to you, both because of the geographical location and the sparser population in certain areas. So all of these things kind of change your expectations. So I think realistically, do you lower your expectations, and is that it's not necessarily a good thing? Should my expectations be any lower because of where I live? Well, not really. I mean, there's benefits to where you live, so I recognise that there are those limitations, but I personally believe that this is worth it. So the benefits we get in other ways because of where we live is what we choose as a family. And there are certain issues. So for instance, I used to live in a different area of Highlands, and when we went through the process of adopting my children, we did move to a different area with one of those long-term aims of being this was a more accessible community for us, in the fact that it was more accessible to the rest of our family in different areas of the country. So you do make those decisions based on what you hope will be in place for your children. So, you know, and that's a massive thing in parenting. Do you really expect when you're younger to be making decisions that big? You know, I don't think you do. I don't think I did anyway. I think it was just like, oh yeah, we'll have a family, we'll have a nice place to live, we'll have a garden, it'll be loads of fun. So, I'm okay. So, you expect me to fall, see? Our expectations change. So if I talk now about expectations of professionals, this is where sometimes where I think things can feel challenging, because if the expectations of a parent or a carer change or are different between a professional, and by professional I mean anybody who may be supporting a family, so that could be family support workers, that could be teachers and support workers in education, it could be psychologists, it could be doctors and nurses, whatever it is, OTs, speech and language, there's so many different counsellors, whatever it is. I mean a person who has an involvement in the support of a child with additional support needs, but is not a parent. So there's so many different roles and ways in which this could happen, and I think what how do I get around here? I think the challenge can sometimes be is when expectations differ. So for instance, me in my role for this previously would have been as a teacher. So as a teacher, my expectation might have been that I would just expect a parent to be reading with their child at home every day. Like that was just an expectation. So maybe, but actually, you know, maybe I was being presumptive in recognising that there was maybe something else in the household that made that really challenging. Not that a parent doesn't want to do it, but maybe that things that made it really challenging. So maybe there was another child to look after. Maybe people are having to work different random shifts in order to stay financially viable. But actually, in that little contribution to my child's life, yeah, probably as a teacher, probably wasn't always considering that for every single child all the time. And I think that's the perspective as a parent, that we just sometimes wish that anybody, whoever they are, can just take a moment to be able to think about your expectations of your child may be this, but this is the reality of my world. And so it can become really important to recognise that you may be a professional in this area, I may be a qualified additional support needs teacher, but that parent looking after that child is the genuine real expert for that child. Now, I know that comes with all sorts of complicated issues like bias, and we're influenced and we're personally connected, and all of these different issues that mean that it's hard to balance off our judgments. But we have to make sure that we don't get into a situation of blaming each other or blaming somebody else for a predicament that we're in. I think what we have to do is try and bring our expectations together to try and make them match, because at the end of the day, the expectation for everybody should be the final outcome of the best experience for a child, the best support that can be in place for a child, and so we have to kind of work together to achieve that. Woo! Just balancing over some hilly bits here. So that's where I think expectations of a professional is kind of, it needs to maybe be understood from a parent perspective, but also it'd be really nice if we can have some reflection from professionals' perspective as well. And, you know, most professionals do that process and do recognise, you know, what do I need to work on, you know, every year with annual reviews, and you see what's gone well this year, what's not going so well, what do I need to think of a little bit more. And most of us will be guilty of having some unconscious bias, and just being able to realise when we're doing these things, so we don't get into this process of blame, and, you know, whether or not we're blaming particular professionals or we're blaming parents, the blame's totally irrelevant when we get down to it, because it's the action that's important, and the support for the child is what we need to focus on. So what about the child themselves then? If we go down that idea of what a child's perspective is, again, I'm going to cross, I don't know if you can see this, just a little stream down here. So I'm just going to cross this little stream and then I'm going to come back. So I didn't get any wet feet that time, that was good. So as a young person with additional support needs, what might be an expectation? Now, obviously every child is unique and every child is different, and I think we have to think about expectations for this video in relation to what their additional support need might be. So, because I think children at the end of the day will have kind of similar expectations of what they want in life, you know. Children want to have fun, they want to be happy, they want to have friends, they want to have experiences, irrelevant of what their additional support need is. Irrelevant if it's complex needs, or irrelevant if it's an additional support need that is, you know, maybe short term, such as a medical issue that's going to be cleared up, or whether that is dealing with a period of loss. All children are children at the end of the day, and I think we've all been children, so I think we can all remember what it was really like to be a kid and what you wanted. And, you know, you wanted to be happy, have fun, have friends, feel liked, be included. The massive thing for children is just about being able to be one of the people and be involved. And this can be really difficult for kids with additional support needs, because quite often they can be misunderstood, really struggle to be communicated with, because maybe there's nobody who communicates like them. They can feel isolated because maybe socially and emotionally they're withdrawing themselves, or maybe they put themselves out there too much, and so people shy away from them because they appear too overly confident or silly or boisterous or whatever it is. And so the expectations of a child as a parent, for me, I think is about being able to help them manage that and help them see themselves and understand who they are as a person, and give them that own personal understanding of who they are, and help them believe in themselves and help them have some self-worth. And all of those things should hopefully enable a young person to recognise that they can be expected to be the best they can be. I think I've used that phrase a few times. But it is about not living up to other people's expectations, because actually you're setting yourself up to fail. It's about knowing what you can do and recognising who you are as a person, and therefore doing the best you can. And if a child can exceed their own expectations, then they're going to hugely build their own level of confidence. Woo! It's very pretty. Can you see this is the path over here? Yeah, it's really nice. So a lot of the work that I do and other hats is about, you know, giving young people the opportunity to recognise their own self-worth, giving them an opportunity to express themselves, giving them opportunities to build relationships. And actually that's the most important thing. And I think as a parent or a carer, if you can do that, however you can, that's the most important thing. So if you can create opportunities for them to connect with other people, then wow, that's the best. And that can be difficult when you're here, because if you're living in the Highlands, woo, see, I nearly went down then. If you're living in the Highlands, it can be difficult to connect with other people like you, because we're so sparsely spread out. So maybe there is nobody within if they're in a small school community, maybe there is nobody like your child, and so having to find a way out to be able to connect with other people. And there is amazing things that do go on where people can connect, and after school clubs and groups and charities and third sector organisations that are working really hard to give children with additional support needs these opportunities. This is Me Highland is one of them, and they are connecting families, and it's so beneficial for the children and for their families as a whole, because actually what it does is connect you back to that expectation as a parent that I think I talked about before. You know, as a young person, when you think about having a family, do you really expect this is the way you're going to be living your life? You imagine fun and happiness and making memories, and all of that can happen. You know, it really can. And so just finding a way to make it happen for your family. And there are things that make that difficult. So if there are physical challenges, so accessibility is a massive issue for so many people, you know, there is things out there. You need to come to organisations like us and ask, this is my problem. Is there any way we can get funding? Is there any organisation you can direct me to that can support mobility issues? Is there accessible bikes? And they do exist, but it can be a challenge. And that takes us back to that expectation of things being a struggle and it being a fight. And I think when you sit down at night, when you're caring and parenting for a child with additional support needs, you genuinely are exhausted, because it just takes so much more out of you. And that's where it is so important to do things like this. Come out, take a walk, appreciate the moments, appreciate the little things, you know. Or my son did something the other day where he just asked permission to do something, and I don't even think somebody else might even have noticed, but to me I was like, oh, wow, he did that, that's amazing. I was so delighted, because it just showed he started to begin to develop an understanding of, you know, how it may make somebody else feel, and that's something he really genuinely struggles with. You know, so these little things are so key. I feel like I'm just turning around in circles because it's really uphill and I'm just gonna not be able to breathe. So, you know, these little things, celebrate the little things, enjoy the little moments, get out there and take the moments that you can. Like, yes, I'm making this video for you, but wow, I get to be out here and I get to appreciate this, you know? And so that's like a massive thing for me to be able to do. And it changes my expectations a little bit in a way, because doing things like this makes me really appreciate what I've learned from my children, what I've learned from the opportunity of understanding their needs and different, again, I've been really lucky to work with kids with all sorts of additional support needs over the years, and I learned something from every single one of them, whether they've taught me different ways of communication, so, you know, learning a little bit of Makaton, or learning how to kind of use colours to help express how we're feeling and emotions, or let me think of other things we've done over the years, planning activities that are very sensory or very calming, or creating safe spaces, or physical deep pressure games and activities, and seeing when you recognise how personalised you need to create things for a child, and when you deliver that and you see the reward through a child's eyes, maybe through a facial expression, maybe verbally, you know, maybe just a physical sense of feeling that you can get, it's incredible. And so we're really lucky when we get to work with children with additional support needs, because they are so appreciative generally, because actually their expectations tend to just be that they want to be happy and they want to be comfortable and they want to feel safe and involved and included. And if you can do that, which as a parent you're doing every single day, then you're doing everything you can, and it's a very, very rewarding position to be in, even if it's really hard. And I think that's what I want to say to you for this video, is our expectations may have totally changed, and maybe life is not what you expected it to be. You know, maybe it's not easy to get out every day, maybe it's not easy to organise holidays or go anywhere else, or you can't just rock up to a restaurant to go for dinner, you can't do all of those things that you possibly thought life would be. But what do you have? Yeah, you have the gift of an incredible young person, and seeing every little achievement that they can make and the value that that brings to you as an individual and for your family, and what you can learn from that is such an appreciation for life and for everything we do have. This feels very deep and meaningful, doesn't it? So anyway, before I think I might fall over a few times on my way home, let's have a wee look So I will leave you with the message of appreciate the moments, appreciate the little things, and don't lower your expectations, but widen them. Expect different things. Be, welcome a surprise. Accept and believe in the opportunity you have and for your children and young people, because you will gain so much more from it. Thank you for walking with me. I'm glad, hopefully you didn't fall over. Take care and speak soon.